Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Jennifer Cook DeRosa, and we have a fantastic webinar today. And we really have some wonderful news to share with you guys about a scholarship program that's going to be offered by Rickett's Great Book College. And so I want to turn the presentation over to them. They are all here representing Rickett's Great Books College. So I am not the one giving you the presentation on the college. So I'm hopeful that all of your questions will get answered today. If you have questions during the presentation, you can put them in the chat box. We also have a Q&A tab. I'll monitor both of those for these guys, and we'll make sure to get all those answered. So we have three fantastic presenters. We have the who's who from the college here, really. We have Dave Daniels. He's the president of Rickett's Great Books College. We have Ray Ravalia, and he is the provost. And we have Dr. Jeff Scarborough, and he is the dean of faculty. And these guys are going to tell you all about this new college, all about the program, all about great books, all about the scholarship, and everything that you came here to listen to, which is not me. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for the kind introductions. And to the folks who are attending, we appreciate your time, and hopefully it will be fruitful and productive, and you get a bunch of information about us, and you are curious as to follow up around the scholarships, which we'll discuss in detail. But at the end of the day, we have launched a new college, Rickett's Great Books College, focused on, obviously, a classical education centered around the great books. And the agenda for today will be a quick kind of a spiel about our founder, the fellow who thought of this and has funded it out of his own pocket up until now, and our team. So you'll meet Ray and Jeff and hear more from them. You'll hear from me, obviously. We'll talk about what our definition of a great books education is, just so we level set and align around that. And we'll talk about what is Rickett's Great Book College and how is it different than any other kind of great books program out there. And by my last count, there were 49 great books programs out there. And why a great books degree? You know, what can you do with it? What does it lead to? What are the benefits and what is the return? And then lastly, we'll go into great detail around the scholarship offer, a fully scholarship student, and includes books and fees and everything. So no out-of-pocket expenses whatsoever, at least from our end. And then we'll reserve ample time for a question and answer session. Our founder, Mr. Joe Rickett. And so Ray, I think you know him best. If you want to kind of
absolutely. So Mr. Rickett is someone who started off life working his way through college, went to Creighton University, and as he was figuring out how to support his young family, he was sort of going in and out of Creighton while also beginning to pursue a career in investing, stock markets, and whatnot. After finishing, he founded Ameritrade and had the idea of discount brokers. And so this is one of these things where he thought, people want to be able to just go online and make trades themselves. And everyone's like, no, Joe, no, they like to talk to the broker. It's a lot of fun. That's why they're there. He's like, people would rather just pay a lot less money and do the trades themselves, especially when they know what they're doing. And he had this vision and he pushed it through. And originally it was trading using touch tones. And then as the internet came about, it was internet brokerage. And by the time the dust settled, the company went public, and Mr. Ricketts found himself a billionaire. And as he began to look out to think, what should he do philanthropically? He thought education has really been something that has long motivated him. And so he started a charitable organization called Opportunity Education, which did a lot of work in the developing world. All the while, though, he kept thinking that there are a lot of smart kids out there who really need better and different avenues to a good education and a good college education. Really, the best way to get that is from a great books approach. Thought that if we could use the technology, distance learning, and real-time video conferencing seminars, that we could produce something that would be very high touch, but also very low cost, and that this would be a way to get a world-class education out to anyone in the US, or really anyone in the world at a price that would be pretty affordable, and certainly a lot less expensive than a traditional university that's spending a lot of money on physical infrastructure and whatnot. And so we set out on this project about 6 years ago, started working on it, and have just now gotten to the point where we are looking for the first group of students. but I'll hand it back to you with that, Dave.
Thank you, Ray. So the key takeaway is one, Joe is a very kind and unassuming man, very humble. You wouldn't
Right.
add a nickel to his name. Very, very charitable. Been very successful in the business world through hard work, grit, determination, literally a self-made man. And more importantly, his ability to think and draft off of his own education, which is rooted in the classics as well. It really taught him how to think, how to problem solve. And he truly believes that post-secondary education across the globe is way too expensive and not producing the students who critically think and problem solve, the students we need for the next generation of this economy, the global economy. So, and last, he also believes that education should not just be, about focusing on preparing a student for college or a career. His philosophy and ours as well is that we focus on preparing a student for life. And we do this by helping students explore the lessons and truths passed down to us from the scientists, philosophers, the artists, and the best thinkers in history throughout time all over the world. So the two guys who are the smart people on the team, Ray and Jeff, would you guys just tell the group about yourselves for a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. I spent about 27 years at an institution that tries to make education about as expensive as possible, Stanford University. And I would always joke that Stanford's the sort of place that isn't interested in increasing the number of students it admits. It wants to increase the number of students it rejects, likes to be highly selective. While I was there, I spent my time mostly working on pre-college stuff, built out the Stanford Online High School. Before that, had done a thing called Education Program for Gifted Youth. When I left Stanford, I had created a thing called Pre-Collegiate Studies, which housed all of the various activities there. So I'd done that. When I left, I created a thing called Dwight Global Online School. And my thing that I always like to point to is if you look at the niche rankings for online high schools, Stanford Online High School is perennially #1 and Dwight's perennially #2. So we've had a lot of success creating these kinds of programs. Also did a residential summer thing called School of the New York Times. But this now is what I really see as the culmination of everything I've done in my career is building out the Rickett Great Books College. Jeff, my longtime colleague.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Scarborough. My background's in philosophy. I wrote a dissertation at Penn on in the history of philosophy, sort of a historically informed study of the philosophy of perception. Even in graduate school, I was probably most struck, not so much by the content always, but with the power of the transformative power of philosophical thinking, critical thinking, thinking carefully. And so for the past 20 years or so, often with Ray, I've been working on projects that try to make this kind of thinking, careful, logically informed thinking accessible to a broader audience, not just to the academy, to specialists, and did a lot of that at the online high school, and really am excited about the opportunity of the Ricketts Great Book College to really expand that and enable much more students to access this type of education.
Excellent. And I'll be brief. I'm David Daniels. I'm the president of Ricketts Great Book College. And my experience in the last 30 years has been from not within the academy, but outside the academy, trying to help and reform and innovate, mostly around online learning and learning design writ large, focused on access, affordability, and obviously outcomes. How can we drive better outcomes for students so we do drive great thinkers? And when they do leave with a credential from the university, they can actually do something with it that's a lifelong sort of impact. So ran businesses for some of the largest education companies in the world and some of the smallest ones as well too. And I find myself now at a college.
Just to address quickly, somebody had asked about accreditation, and I know that's going to be a question that will come up again and again. The way accreditation works, now I'm going to take a brief aside. Accreditation may change dramatically in about 3 months once the new administration takes office. We'll see what happens then. But assuming that nothing changes, the standard way accreditation works is once you've been in operation for a year, you can start the accreditation process. It takes about 6 to 9 months after that before they will finish the review for accreditation. At that point, unless you're a criminal organization, you inevitably become accredited. accreditation is retroactive to the start of the university. So when students take courses with us initially, we will be unaccredited. Once we have achieved accreditation, that is retroactive, and all the courses students will have completed with us will be fully accredited. We expect, as I said, that to happen in our second year. The reason why it's going to happen in our second year is that we will be accredited through the Distance Education Accrediting Commission, which is one of the national accrediting agencies. Anybody who's been following the University of Austin will see that they're on about a 5-year cycle before they can become accredited, and that's because they're going through one of the traditional regional accreditors for in-person schools, and those run on a slower cycle. But I'm happy to talk a lot more about accreditation at the end, but that's the nutshell version.
So, surely many of you have sort of had some experience in the discussions about great books. Really, what we're talking about here is a entire college curriculum that's focused on the great classics of largely Western literature, philosophy, science, and history, of course. And the idea is that we look carefully at these texts. We dig into them as really our primary text and our focus, and are really trying to interpret them, to appreciate them in their context, and to figure out what they mean, and to take from that, maybe switch to the next slide here, to take from that project of interpretation a focus on the enduring ideas, the discussion of values, about what justice is, about what freedom is in its many forms and meanings, about how we can know various sorts of things, what are the limits to knowledge as well, and even bigger questions still, how is the world put together? What are the questions about what there is, what's out there, issues about what the world is made of, how it's structured, where it's going. So these are timeless questions, certainly questions that bear continued investigation, and these are definitely a focus of the text, questions we want people to be thinking about throughout their lives. But there's also an element here of acquiring skills. I mentioned in my introduction, acquiring skills of interpretation, of writing, of patience and careful reading, and listening to the thoughts of others, responding to those thoughts in a productive and constructive manner. And then even more nuanced skills of Socratic inquiry, thinking about how to argue by analogy, which Socrates, Plato, Aristotle are masters of. So really skills that translate outside of the classroom, outside of a particular area of focus, and into a whole range of careers. And so that's sort of a nutshell of our approach to a great books education.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Jeff. And to summarize, this approach, it definitely aims to provide students with that foundational intellectual framework, for lack of a better way of putting it, that fosters critical engagement, wisdom, moral character, and it's a key feature in not only liberal arts in college, but K-12 classical education. But at the end of the day, it's all about promoting that intellectual independence through exploration of civilization shaping ideas. And last, as Jeff kind of pointed out too, a great books education centers on those enduring human questions, those questions around justice, virtue, knowledge, freedom, and the nature of reality. I think we all could use a little bit of that now as well, but nonetheless, laying a foundation for lifelong learning and fostering, in my opinion, a lot of intellectual curiosity, which produces great citizens. If you boil down the Socratic method, and this is one of the key differentiators in a synchronous online environment, our courses and our program and our curriculum is engagement centered. Okay, active learning, we all know, emphasizes student engagement and participation in the learning process. So we move away from the passive listening lecture sage on the stage to encourage active involvement. And we accomplish that through Zoom and synchronous sessions. So unlike most fully remote online degree programs where you don't have to show up at a certain time, in this program you do. And Ray and Jeff can wax on that here in a little bit. We're also going to foster critical thinking. We talked about that. A great books education and the Socratic method, it fosters that critical thinking. Those problem-solving skills are a result of that critical thinking. And students, they'll do a lot of analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information rather than simply memorizing it. So we're going to go to higher cognitive levels with our approach. And fosters a lot of collaboration and communication. So active learning, in a nutshell, involves a lot of group work, a lot of discussions, a lot of peer interactions. So we're going to do a great job in helping students develop those teamwork skills and those communication skills that are important in any discipline or any career. Last, an application of that knowledge. So the approach requires students to apply that knowledge in real world or simulated scenarios, making that learning much more meaningful and practical and impactful. And last, there'll be plenty of opportunity for feedback and reflection with our instructors. So include opportunities for immediate feedback, allowing students to assess their understanding and to continuously improve in what they're doing. So at the end of the day, active learning, and I think we all share this philosophy, and certainly our founder does, it makes the learning experience much more dynamic and much more student-centered, promoting deeper understanding and, most importantly, long-term retention.
So I just emphasize that the focus of our class time is really not lecture based. I think this is sort of the core of the many meanings of the Socratic method, is that it's driven by question and answering, but not necessarily question and answering by a professor who's trying to lead people in a certain direction. Really trying to make much of the discussion driven by students, by student questions, by students offering their perspective and their experience and their opinions, and then building on that, building an understanding together of what's going on in the text. And that's certainly a much more lively experience for students than listening to someone talk forever, but also it is really creating the skills of inquiry that students will use on their own and in their careers and in other contexts.
I'll regurgitate and repeat some of what Jeff said, and Ray would love for you to weigh in as well. But unlike, again, traditional online colleges or even on-site modality of learning in a classroom that rely solely on lectures, again, kind of a parroting of information, and students are busily taking notes, our courses are going to be extremely engaging. Our model is extremely engaging. And we're not just going to rely on textbooks and examinations, objective examinations at the end of a course. So again, we'll stand out in three distinct ways. And I think that, Ray, I don't know if you want to cover this one, at least in terms of how we're going to stand out, but I really would like to emphasize the films and what has been created thus far and the time and the investment going into them, and how I see that personally as kind of a bridge to some pretty difficult material. So we're going to bridge the old world, tough, rigorous readings of the greatest thinkers in the world with films that sort of synthesize what's going on, opined with leading subject matter experts from across the globe, some of the most prestigious colleges and universities. But Ray, do you want to talk about our model a little bit more, especially?
Yeah, absolutely. We really want this to be something where the students are coming together in real time as part of a learning community, working with the professor to go through the books, to discuss them in depth, and to really develop their own understanding of them. So it is not something where you're going to sit there and passively be lectured to. This really is method of shared inquiry. You need to do the work. You need to bring your ideas to bear. We will spend a lot of time discussing, arguing, analyzing. And at the end of the day, it's about getting as close to truth as we can. One of the things we have done, in the same way that the films contextualize the books to make it easier to approach, we've structured the content so that the first year is essentially a history of ideas course, where you'll go through the entirety of the Western canon at a fairly rapid clip. So in that, in 32 weeks, you're going to do a once over lightly, touching every book, every author, every era. This is going to give you a pretty good understanding of what's there. It's not going to give you the depth of knowledge that you will get later when you go back through and read in more detail, but it will give you a very good understanding. And this is going to serve two purposes. One, it will sort of let you know what the whole story is, so that when you go back and read things in more detail, you know what's coming. So you can see ideas emerge that you know will be developed later, and this helps make them seem more relevant. The other thing it does is it really gives you a sense of, is this an approach that you really want to take? If it turns out after a year that this was great, but you know what you really want to do is become an accountant, and you want to go someplace where you can go all in on studying accounting, by all means, you can go and do that. You will have 1 year of great books under your belt, and during that time, you will have seen everything. So it's not like you will have a super intense knowledge of ancient Greece and nothing else. You will have a pretty good understanding of everything there is: the Greeks, the Romans, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the founding of the US, and so forth. And you'll look back on this and think that was great, that was super intense. And a lot of universities will waive the bulk of your general education requirements because you've done this. So strategically, it's very useful. If you're someone who thinks, now this is really great, this is really what I want to do, well, now you know the next 3 years are really going to be a lot of fun, because you can go back in, go through the stuff in more detail, really dig in. And in fact, if you think this is absolutely how I like to spend my time, you can stick around for a 4th year and do a master's with us. So a lot of opportunity there. But part of what makes us different is the films provide the easy entry. The history of ideas provides a solid foundation in which to go in more depth. And then those final 3 or 4 years really let you dig in with the full knowledge of what's coming. And I think that produces a lot better results. That was something that many of the faculty we worked with on the films and in developing the courses were very excited about this approach, because it's something that made a lot of sense to them, but it's not something that anybody else is doing.
Excellent. So the key things to keep in mind here, we do address the needs of the modern day learner. We're all engaged with social media. Some of us are trying to keep our families off of it with some luck or no luck. Certainly no luck with mine, but we're certainly trying. But at the end of the day, video is a form factor that does appeal to the younger generation as well as folks my age. And the folks who were consultants for us on the film, the faculty consultants on the design of the courses and the films themselves are like a who's who of experts and well-respected scholars and subject matter experts throughout the globe, working at some of the most prestigious colleges and universities. So a lot of these folks are featured on the film. And if you go to the next slide there, Jennifer, it's, well, not an attractive slide. It just shows you, and this will be on our website when we update it, of the quality and pedigree of folks who weighed in on the subject matter and contributed to the subject matter and helped consult with us on the films themselves. So just like I said, a who's who of experts, and quite compelling as well. So as you watch them, and hopefully we'll get you access to a few more, it draws you in. It's just, again, another positive differentiator that does not exist in what I see as any online remote synchronous program out there in the marketplace today. Again, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but passionate educators, world-renowned scholars, dedicated mentors, all folks committed to the great books approach, and the approach of engagement and that Socratic method and shared inquiry model. And that will be the criteria and the rubric which we bring on faculty as we scale the business of itself. Go to the next slide there. Our students, obviously want to bring a lot of diverse perspectives and want to share that intellectual curiosity. As we pointed out too, the sessions will not be asynchronous. There'll be a requirement to actually attend them live, where it won't be a lecture. I can't stress that enough. It won't be a talking head or a passive approach to it. It will be an engaged approach. So students want to become prepared and contribute to actually realize a grade. But again, we'll be using the latest in technology, Zoom, and any other sorts of engagement models that we're taking a look at currently.
Yeah, I mean, why a great books degree? Most degrees are really about learning how to think and learning how to think well. This kind of degree gives you plenty of opportunity to do that. Also, to increasingly being able to, digest text, think analytically about it, construct arguments, pull from different sources, quickly sort through and systematize things. Those are very important skills. And those are the kinds of things which, even as AIs and other things come into play, if you can do that very effectively, those sorts of emerging tools only make you more powerful in what you can do. So these are skills that are going to be readily applicable and only more valuable over time, as opposed to very sort of fact-based collections of information which rapidly go out of date. I mean, even when I was at Stanford 20 years ago, that engineering school, the feeling was that those degrees expired in about 3 years. And so there was a very robust process for continuing education and an expectation almost that people would be constantly refreshing their education. Whereas in philosophy, where I was, there was a sense that that knowledge was never going to go out of date. And really it was about the sort of the techniques of thinking you developed were only going to sort of sharpen over time. So I think that the Great Books degree really has that kind of approach. And whether you are taking this into a career where you're going to learn what you do on the ground, or if you're taking this into a graduate program, this is really going to be a great foundation for a lot of things that you might want to do. And I think David has some examples on the next slide.
Yeah, and while we're there, somebody put in the chat too, what kind of professions does this lead to? Law, data and analytics, research, journalism, teaching, archaeology, museum work, anything you can think of, at least where you're required to think, right? You're required to problem solve, you're required to have a baseline of knowledge, what have you. So, and we can certainly share more information there. But on the next slide, there's just a small spattering of who's who that have received what I call a classical / Great Books education. But that's not a comprehensive list by any means. So I think we all know about the Harry Potter series and J.K. Rowling. Now I understand the Voldemort and all those spells, after knowing more about her. Tolkien was a graduate of the Great Books programs, classical education model. Ted Turner, Steve Jobs, even, I think we all recall that name.
We are looking for 20 students to be part of this initial cohort. And the scholarship that we will offer to those 20 students is 4-year full tuition, books included. So there will be zero cost to you for the degree. And you get the honor of being in the first cohort. Those who don't make that cut and who are still interested, we're still interested in you, and we will have additional cohorts coming on board. There will still be fairly robust scholarship support. And for the subsequent students, the goal is to have you be able to earn your degree for less than $20,000. That's all 4 years worth of it. And that's not just out of pocket, that's exclusive of any other sort of scholarship support you would have. So you could even whittle that pretty close to zero. But for that first 20, it's going to be full support coming from us. Next slide, please. So how do we determine who is in the first 20? Well, we're going to ask you to do 3 things for us. The first is take a reading test. Fairly straightforward, especially if you've done the CLT or anything like that already. We're just going to run you through 5 passages that are emblematic of what you'd be reading in the Great Books College and answering some questions about. Not multiple choice, just sort of open-ended answers. Just want to see how you're thinking about those passages, and it gives you a sense too to get a feeling for the kinds of things you're going to have to read. We'd also like to see how you write. And so we're going to ask you to prepare a 2 to 5 page intellectual autobiography and just talk to us about who you are as a student, how you've come to where you are, and what's driving you to be interested in us. And lastly, we're going to have you join a seminar, and we will conduct a couple 3 Socratic seminars. Jeff will lead them. We will set a time, and about 2 days before the seminar, we'll tell you what we're reading, give you time to prepare, and then we'll give you a set of questions too to be thinking about, and then you'll come and we will conduct kind of seminar that will be the sort of thing that will be happening regularly once you're in the college. So again, this is going to give you a opportunity to see what it would feel like to be in the Rickett Great Books College, and it will give us a sense to see how you would do in the environment that the college will be in. And from that, we are going to identify this 20 students who we think would be the best fit, and those would be the ones we will offer the scholarship to. The hope is that those we offer the scholarship to are interested in being with us for the full 4 years, and the scholarship automatically renews each year. So as long as you're sticking with us, you can see this all the way through, and this is a way to earn your bachelor's degree at no cost at all. That said, as I mentioned earlier, if after a year you decide this is not where you want to be, we will shake your hand, wish you luck, and help you go to wherever place you want to get to next. The scholarship is just for the work in the Rickett Great Books College, so it's not, that will not travel with you, but the credits you've earned are yours, and those certainly will transfer. So we say, if this is the kind of challenging, rewarding educational experience that you're seeking, if you want to be equipped with the essential skills that will last a lifetime, this is the place you should come. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, so let's take the questions now. I see we've had a number of good ones. Jennifer, why don't you play Inquisitor and pick
Yes,
the
I will.
questions you like and put them to us?
The
Absolutely.
first question was if there are any foreign language requirements.
No, there are not any foreign language requirements.
And I will just say there was a couple questions regarding the specific books, and you, I think, gave a link.
Yeah, I dropped a link that
That's right.
it should take you to something. I'm giving it a test right now. It says Rickett Great Books College courses and degrees, concise doc. Concise is sort of a generous word for a document that's 43 pages. And this will walk you through the full structure of the courses, what we're exploring in each of the courses, together with who the faculty experts are who show up in the films. And at the very bottom 4 or 5 pages is a complete list of the books being read. So if you're curious to see exactly what we consider to be the great books, you can see them listed there. And that's obviously, it is a moving target because we sit down and we think, oh yeah, these will be the books. And then we get teaching the course and we think, oh man, we should have included this other one. And then we pull it in, or, we offer a course a couple of times and we realize that we're never getting around to this thing, or the students are reading it and that no one is finding it interesting. And so then maybe it falls by the wayside. So, expect that there will be some evolution over time, but this gives you a pretty good sense of what it is that we're looking at.
And you guys can pull this full document yourself. I'm just kind of giving you a quick scan here. Okay, so we did have a question about specifically, how does one apply for the scholarship and when do classes begin?
Those are good questions. For how to apply for the scholarship, what we'd like right now is just drop us a note just tell us that you are interested in moving forward, and then we'll give you more information. It is, there'll be a very simple inquiry form that we'll send you just to let us get your name and contact information so that we can keep track of you. We will almost immediately send you the link to the reading test that we mentioned and send you the specific prompt for the intellectual autobiography. Once you've done those, and we have done about 8 people in a cohort, then we will send out the invitation for a Socratic seminar and give you a couple opportunities to schedule that. We are hoping to run this process between now and middle of January, and ideally find an initial cohort of students who could start the beginning of February. What we'd love to see are those students who are ready to dive in and ideally run the first semester in the kind of February through May timeframe, and perhaps the second semester on a late May through end of August timeframe, so that you would then roll into year 2 in fall of 2025. That said, if that's more aggressive than you'd want, then you would start in February, and we would you could take the summer off and pick it up again in the fall with the second semester. But we definitely love to find students who are ready to start in February, and that's so that we can get this process going, because the sooner we get people moving through the college, the sooner we can do all of the accreditation traps, and the sooner everyone will be happy.
And the follow-up question to that is, will the program follow a traditional 2-semester per year schedule?
I'm going to say both yes and no. And I'm going to say that because for the most part, it will follow a traditional 2-semester a year schedule. That said, there are so many students who find themselves at the end of freshman year, at the end of the first semester of senior year in high school, just chomping at the bit to get out, and who would like nothing more than to jump ship and enter college in the January, February timeframe, or students who, for whatever reason, find themselves, maybe you went to some other college and decided it was a horrible, terrible fit, and you are going to bail somewhere in that first semester of your freshman year, and now you need something else to do. So I think we will always have a cohort of students who are starting in January, and then those students at least will typically do the first semester of the history of ideas in the spring and a second semester in the summer, so that they can get back on the fall spring cycle for their second year and beyond.
Can you give us a general idea as far as the weekly time commitment and or what an expected schedule would look like? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll say something, and then Jeff, you can correct me when I get it wrong. What I could imagine is, typically, this is going to be a full-time experience, and coming into the history of ideas, the intent there is that this is the only course you are taking in your first year, and you're going to run through the stuff sequentially. So rather than taking 4 different courses at the same time, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you are sort of doing a chronological progression through the history of ideas, you're going to be doing this full bore. So you will expect to spend about 3 to 4 hours, 3 hours a day in seminar. Perhaps half of that is in what I would call like the serious seminar, and half of that in more the discussion section, review section. But you'll be doing that 4 to 5 days a week. So you'll be hitting about 15 hours a week of seat time, so that over a 16-week semester, you will be meeting the requirements that people typically expect to see to earn 16 credit hours. So this will be an intense experience, but it will be absolutely delightful.
And with the classes, is a camera required?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's just the reason to have the camera is, one, we will soon get tired of looking at each other. That said, we want this to really feel like we are sitting in the same room, actively working with each other. And so the camera goes a long way to maintaining that sense of presence and familiarity. And that's something that, I've spent now, I've been doing synchronous video-based courses since the mid-1990s, and all of the data on persistence and completion and success point to having consistent video really improves the likelihood of success for students.
And then we've had a couple questions about the age and grade level for someone applying. So with the start date of February, that first cohort, obviously we're looking at students that have already graduated from high school, but what would be an optimal target as far as the incoming class? You're looking for students that will certainly be graduates of high school, correct?
So I'm looking for students somebody who is a recent graduate, that would be great. Someone who is in the middle of their senior year and is itching to get to college and not waste that second half of their senior year suffering through high school, by all means, come and join us. I've known plenty of people who have, in my first years doing online stuff with gifted kids at Stanford, we routinely would have students who would jump ship after their junior year and head to college a year early. So, we are happy to have people who jump ship in the middle of their senior year. An older student who may have been out for a couple, 3 years, who is ready to jump back in, that's great. We had somebody earlier who noted that he had gone somewhere else for a semester and a half, asked if those credits would transfer. Absolutely. Be happy to have, someone like that jump in. But, it is going to largely be students who are at that stage of their intellectual development, just out of high school or out of high school just recently. And, at some point I anticipate we'll have additional cohorts of students with a much wider age band. But I think this initial group, it's probably going to work best if these are people who are fairly narrow banded. Anyone who filled out the online inquiry, because I see someone here said we requested to apply but got no reply. once we knew that we were going to have this meeting scheduled, I figured anybody who is on the short list of people that we want to talk to is going to be at this meeting. And so, your reward for being here is you've gotten these documents, you've gotten our contact information, and you'll be at the front of the queue with any sort of application. We will cycle back through people who've contacted us elsewise, but we wanted to make sure to prioritize this group, and we appreciate you giving your time coming here this evening.
I know we always have very motivated parents in the homeschool community. So a lot of the people listening to this webinar today are probably parents of homeschool students and are in part homeschooling because of their own love of learning. And so I think you probably will see some enthusiasm coming from the parents as well. Well, that is all the questions that we have in the chat, and I don't see any other hands raised. So do you guys have any parting words before we wrap it up today?
For myself at least, there was a great question in the chat about what are the goals of the school and the school leaders here. Well, I've been in higher education for the better part of 30 years and worked with community colleges all the way up to universities where Ray and Jeff have been. And I do think it's time for some reform. I do think that we are offering a model that is not only affordable to those who aren't scholarshiped, very transfer friendly, but also is going to produce great outcomes. So my goal is not to have 50,000 students or be a mega university by any means whatsoever. We're not clearly aligned on any goal just yet, but I think we all, one thing I can say, not just platitudinally, we have a religious commitment to quality, to engagement, to outcomes, and I think there is a thirst and a hunger, to go back to how classical education and great books were done in the past, and I think we're going to be a nice alternative to what's out there. So that's my parting words. I don't know if Ray or Jeff want to add anything.
Send us your questions, and we're always happy to arrange individual conversations later as well.
Absolutely. One more thing, Jennifer, I know I said I'm done, but you know me, I'm the second youngest out of 9 children, and I have to talk, is that we are not just toying, we're putting together an early college credit dual enrollment program. I just can't tell you when. So I know a lot of you have students who are still in high school who would benefit by a differentiated sort of early college credit dual enrollment course where it is more synchronous and more engaged and a different type of course versus the general education courses you could take at your community college, and something that will hopefully spur interest in the program itself. So we'll have more information on that, and we'll hopefully be blessed enough to work with Jennifer some more and be able to get that information out to you as well.
Yep. And the community knows me. You guys probably figured out, even though I didn't say it, that there may be some dual enrollment things happening in the works. We love participating in pilot programs and beta programs and early cohorts and things like that. We have lots of families that love to do those things as well. And so when that happens, we're looking forward to participating in that with you guys.
Excellent. Hopefully sooner versus later. We'll keep you updated on that, Jennifer.
Excellent. Great.
Jeff, anything from your perspective?
I'm just super excited to get going. There's little better than pouring through these texts carefully, not on your own, and being able to discuss and dig in. So I'm appreciative of everyone who's stayed with us, and really look forward to talking more.
Great.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you for all the attendees. We really appreciate your time and your attention.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Dr. Scarborough. We really appreciate you guys sharing your vision for this new college. We're excited about the pending accreditation process and going through that. And we're really, I think, excited about the opportunity to get in on that first cohort. When you're addressing a room full of homeschoolers, you don't really have to tell them that education can look differently. They already know that. And so, workarounds for accreditation and things like that, I mean, that's pretty much speaking their language. So we appreciate being invited to apply for those scholarships. And I hope that you get lots of interested and strong candidates from the group that attended today. So from me, if you listened to this session today, you're going to receive the video. If you have follow-up questions, you can always get them to me and I can get them to the right people so that we can make sure all your questions are answered. And thank you very much for your attendance today and your attention. And I hope that you enjoyed it. So until next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you online.
Bye-bye.